Sup, my fellas, don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. Swordsmen who conquered half the world. Runkendals, a family of renowned swordsmen where everyone has exceptional talent and strength. Its members have become unsurpassed rulers of the world. Fight it out, conquer it, enslave them. That's the motto of the Runkendal family, the family to which Jean Runkendal belongs, the youngest of the Rankendellas. At the selection ceremony that determines your future, Jin chose the sword of the head of the family. This means that he is the one who will lead the Runkendal family. A mysterious man approached him and said that his choice met expectations. Interesting, Jin thought. Jin had no doubt that the future would bring him success and, of course, fame. But he doesn't see the point. After all, he has no talent for swordsmanship. Jin was called a disgrace to the various departments and was said to fall short of the standards of his family. He was considered the worst swordsman in the family's history. Even his own brothers joked about him practicing with a wooden sword. They said he wasn't worthy of the Barasada. Jin was silent, looking down. One of the brothers approached him and asked why he was silent. Then he kicked him in the stomach and ordered him to respond to his great brothers. Jin fell down clutching his stomach. Sitting on the floor, he reached for his sword, but his brother pinned down his arm. He said there was no point in training him, and Jin grumbled in pain. Then this guy holding a notebook in his hands asked what is it. Haughtily asked does he really think that after reading the book he will learn swordsmanship. The blonde brother holding his wooden sword in his hand said that the Jin was nothing and he was not worthy of a chance, explaining that if they are given a chance, they forget their place and cling to hope. He asked why his brother did this. Then one of them grabbed Jin by the hair and told him that he was only doing it for his own good. Then one of them asked if this was what his nanny taught him. Jin said it wasn't Gilly's fault. His brothers again reproached him for contradicting them and decided to teach him manners. Brothers, a complete lack of talent. All Jin knew was that he needed to keep training. He believed that only by training hard would he gain the recognition of his family, and that he would eventually be recognized as a Rangendal. Jin was banished from the castle. From now on, he is no longer part of the family. He was kept alive on the grounds that they had taken his efforts into account. So for 25 years, he was exiled from his family and doomed to a miserable existence. But then he met the master and realized that he had a talent. And not just a talent, but a talent for magic, which is forbidden in his family. Then the story is moved forward 3 years, and we see Jin trying to replenish his mana by combining it with natural mana. But suddenly, a black aura envelops him. Jin is at a loss as to what happened. Suddenly, a cloud of dark aura appears behind him. Jin asked him who he was. Clot replied that his name was Solderit and he was the Lord of Shadows. Our hero also introduced himself by giving his name. The Shadow Lord then offered Jin a contract. Jin was shocked. Solderit promised him that if Jin agreed, he would gain more than just shadow control, but it can also remove any curse. With the help of the shadows, Solderit discovered that Jin had been greatly hated as a child, and that apparently his talents are sealed by a curse. This curse is called the Blade Illusion and it suppresses your swordsmanship abilities. Such a terrible curse could not have fallen on one of the Rankendellas. That's what attracted the Shadow Lord. He stated that from now on, Jin would not be affected by any curse. The Shadow Lord said that he would enjoy watching Jin become an outstanding mage. The magic dissipated and Jin went outside to test his swordsmanship skills. Drawing his sword from his belt, he lunged. Jin was surprised that Solderit was telling the truth. Now holding the sword in his hands, Jin felt how light it was, like a feather. While swinging his sword, Jin tried to add some magic. Thus, he was able to combine sword and magic. And now the worst swordsman in Rankendal history doesn't exist. Jin exclaimed enthusiastically that he was finally buying it. Suddenly, 3 knights who have been watching Jin all this time appear from behind the bushes. Suddenly, Jin opens his eyes and hears screams. Covered in rocks and covered in blood, he can't move. His body felt so heavy. He keeps hearing screams. When he suddenly remembers, they begin to call out to the master and Solderit, even though he is near death. Jin can't believe he died in his sleep. He gets obsessive thoughts that he is a non-entity. He regrets that he just got the chance to combine magic with the power of Solderit. In desperation, he only asks if it really had to end like this. And if so, why was he even given the chance? Then we see Jin being transported back to her childhood. He is surrounded by men from his family. Jin wonders what's going on. He knows he's dead and can't believe what's happening. The girl turns to him and tells him not to hang up his nose. Jin recognizes the same nanny Jilly. Looking at the space around him, he sees a field littered with swords and recognizes the same sword. The sword of Barisan. Suddenly, Jin realizes that he's at the selection ceremony. He went back in time. He is only 1 year old now. Everyone who was at the ceremony was surprised that Jin chose the sword of the family head in his previous life. He chose this sword by pure chance. But in this one, he decided to make that choice himself. Jin made up his mind and chose the Barasada sword. The group of people were shocked and couldn't believe their eyes. His relatives knew that this sword was the sword of the head of the family, and we see that the head of the family himself says that his youngest son chose the Barasada. With that, the selection ceremony was over, and the order was given. Jin must be taken to the Castle of the Storm. We have a view of the Tempest Castle. It looks really grand and even lives up to its name. A hand tries to reach the book. We can see that it's Jin. After failing to pick up the book, he picks up a chair to reach out. In parallel, he says that it has already been 6 years since he was sent here. According to the family's rules, Jin will stay in the castle until he is 10 years old. This means that he will stay in the castle for another 3 years. But as we can see, this does not please him. Suddenly, shouts are heard from somewhere. When asked what happened, a shocked maid sitting on the floor says to the main character, "There's a dead bird in his room." Seeing this, Jin says that only the castle can do such a thing. When his twin brothers suddenly step in and say, "Oh, look." From their facial expressions, it immediately becomes clear that it was they who killed the poor bird. One of these brothers is called Daytona Rankendel. He is 9 years old and the 11th of the 13 sons of Rankendel. The second one is called Hayton Rankendel. He is also 9 years old. He is the 12th of Rankendel's 13 sons. They sarcastically asked Jin if he liked the gift, but Jin didn't say anything. Jin only thought that he knew what kind of killers they would grow up to be. They're only 9 now and they've already killed a defenseless bird just to torment Jin. Hayton tells Jin that he's annoyed with him, but Jin still doesn't say anything. Then they ask him about the fact that the future head of the family really does not put them in anything, and they joke about where his Barasada is. Jin said something, but Hayton didn't hear him, so he started teasing him. He told Jin to repeat it. Jin fell silent again. Then Hayton grabbed him by the shoulder. I almost hit him, but Jin blocked the kick just in time. Hayton was at a loss. Jin told Hayton to shut up. Jin was giving off dark energy. Jin then slapped his brother. Hayton, in turn, was outraged and exclaimed about how Jin dares to beat him. Then Jin hit him again. This time, the impact was even stronger. With the words that Jin had endured for a long time, he prepared for the next blow, and a mysterious dark energy was still coming from him. Jin punched Hayton again, this time in the stomach. The room was noisy. Jin said that from now on, it was best for his brothers to stay out of his sight. Just then, a man with a red cloak came to the noise. He saw that the twin brothers were lying unconscious and Jin was standing next to them. This person asked about what had happened here, turning to the young masters. Then Jin, still emitting dark energy from his hand, said the man's name. His name was Han. Han turned to Jin and asked him what he had done. The young master lied to the Khan, saying that the twin brothers had fought with each other. Han didn't believe the young master and asked again. Jin then gave Han a cold look and said that they had fought and then plummeted. Han had expected nothing less from the Rankendel. Even children were merciless, he thought. And with Hayton in his hands, he didn't argue with Jin and only accepted his lie. Han was about to take the brothers to the doctor, but Jin interrupted him and said that they didn't need to see a doctor right now. He motioned for Han to follow him. It was raining outside at this time and the weather was not the most pleasant. We see Jin just finished burying the very bird that his brothers killed. He was leaning slightly over the bird's burial site. He buried the bird under a tree, and there were 2 brothers lying unconscious. It was raining outside, and Han asked the young master if he really wanted to drop the twins right there. Han noticed that the rain continued to increase. Jin just said what they needed. Remembering again what they had done, he continued. Turning to Han with a cold look, he said that they needed to think about their behavior. Han had no choice but to obey the master's order. Jin went to the castle. He left his brothers in the mud in the rain. But I didn't feel for a second that I'd done anything wrong. Han just stared at Jin from behind him. Suddenly, he felt a strange power. It came from the boy. Han was confused because Jin's power is not like an aura. Han took a closer look at Jin's hand, which was emitting dark energy. He couldn't believe it was magic. If Han was right, then they had bigger problems than their brothers' quarrels. He must report to the head about what happened and that Jin has magic. Then the Khan called out to a passing servant. He ordered him to saddle his horse. Meanwhile, Jin was already in the castle. He watched Han from the window. Jin immediately knew that Han wanted to report everything to his father. Han wasn't just their security guard, but also the one who kept an eye on them. Jin realized that since he thought the boy had magic, he wasn't going to give up so easily. Dark energy radiated from Jin's hand. It turns out that this is the energy of shadows. It is proof of his contract with Solderlaw, the Shadow Lord. With this power, Jin realized that even death didn't break their contract. In this life, thanks to this power, he was immune to curses. In particular, the curse that was on him in his previous life, namely the Blade Illusion curse. Thanks to this, there was no longer a worse person in this life. The swordsman in the family's history, as he was called in his previous life. Jin was determined that a lot of things would be different from what they were in his previous life. Then Jin decided that he needed to do something, namely, meet your father. Meanwhile, Han had already finished reporting to his father about what had happened. He was kneeling on one knee. The father is clearly not happy with this course of events and did not comment on what happened, only repeated the words of Khan that the younger one beat up the twins. After that, my father turned to the Khan. He told him to gather the standard bearers. The father is going to the youngest. After bowing to his father, one of the bannermen announced that all 7 bannermen and 200 knights were ready. And then we see all the members of the standard bearers. Among them is a white-haired girl, the same guy who reported you were ready, a smiling girl with black hair and a guy next to her. The next shot shows us 3 more flag bearers. After gathering all the bannermen and knights, my father headed for Tempest Castle. Here we see for the first time what it looks like. He's dressed all in black, has ashen hair, and looks menacing. We see the Rankindle coat of arms wriggling in the wind, a woman's voice saying that everyone was gathered so suddenly. We see that it is a girl, one of the flag bearers. She asks Def, calling him little brother, if he knows why. She says she's already asked Luna, but she doesn't seem to know either. This Devuka is Mary Rankindle, the 7th standard bearer of the Rankindles. Yawning, she says that she is not up to it and that she needs to beat the magicians. Next to her stands Deeth Rankindle, the 4th standard bearer of the Rankindles. He thinks out loud and says that the twins are only a year old and that they are hardly the problem. Then he answered Marie's question. He said that the father went to see the younger one. Marie asked in surprise why he went to see the younger one. Deeth reminded her that Jin had chosen the family head sword at the selection ceremony. She wondered if this was the only Priscilla, but she immediately responded by saying that they couldn't understand what was on their father's mind. Then one of the flag bearers called out to Marie and Deeth. She motioned for them to keep their voices down. This girl's name is Luna Rankindle, and she is the first of the Rankindle bannermen. Marie suddenly wondered why her father had decided to check on her younger brother in person. The only thing that occurred to her was that he was really special. Meanwhile, the nanny straightens the young master's shirt and tells him that the head is coming to visit them. She suggested that maybe the father wanted to see the children. At the same time, Jin thinks that Han must have told his father everything. Jin thinks Han is he would never say it directly. Jin believes that Han probably just described everything he saw. While the nanny was brushing his hair, all he could think about was what was going on. He assumed that Han had described his power as something that was neither aura nor magic. My father was definitely interested in figuring out what it was. He wanted to see if this power of Jin could contribute to the greatness and prosperity of the family. Meanwhile, the castle gates opened, and the knights came in, their swords pointed at the sky. The knights wore iron shoulder pads and helmets that protected their heads. Then a voice greeted my father, who was the first to enter the castle. And here is the very sword of the head of the family Barasada. My father ordered the twins to be brought in. The twins were kneeling on one knee in front of their father. Their father asked them about their fight with Jin, and he asked them to tell him what their fault was. The twins stiffened at the question and were somewhat confused, but they quickly found a way out of the situation. They said it wasn't their fault, and Jin attacked them first. They put all the blame on him. Once again, they reminded their father that he had defeated them with his unknown power, which is not like an aura, more like magic. And then the twins, pleased with themselves, said that magic is forbidden in their family. Neri, who was standing in the room, confirmed that magic was forbidden and was about to start talking about questioning Jin when her father interrupted her. He turned to his sons and told them to remember that they would not survive in the Rankindle family like this. The twins were only startled and silently headed for the exit, and my father ordered me to bring Jin in. His father's name was Shiren Rankindle. He is the strongest and most indifferent person in the world. He is the greatest hero of the time, a demigod, the quintessential knight. After becoming a knight instead of a mere human, he lost most of his emotions. Now, he is only obsessed with the clan and its development. For Shiren, someone without a talent for swordsmanship is just an empty space. So it was in the past, when Jin was cursed. But now it's different. After collecting his thoughts, Jin was firmly convinced that everything would change in this lifetime. He will make everyone respect him. He headed for the entrance. He opened the gate and all eyes were on him. As soon as he took a step and entered, he immediately got down on one knee. He greeted his father, calling him master. Shiren asked him why Jin called him master instead of father, to which Jin argued that his brothers, sisters, and knights were here. Several hundred people. That's why he decided it was an official visit. He chose what he considered appropriate treatment. Luna was surprised by Jin's answer and admitted that it was very comprehensive. After finishing his answer, Jin thanked him and called him master again. Shiren told the boy that he was in the castle today for a different reason, so the boy can call him father. Shiren decided to ask Jin the same question he had asked the twins. He asked about what prompted Jin to do this. Jin clenched his fist and said, "It was just revenge." He said that every Rangandal should give what they deserve. Marie was surprised by his words. Jin continued by saying that it didn't matter if they did him good or evil. Shiren said nothing. He ordered Jin to stay and everyone else to come out. The knights began to discuss the situation, They talked about whether the junior was able to pass the head test. One of the flag bearers told them not to stand around and follow orders. The knights obeyed. Everyone headed for the exit. Before she left, Marie turned around and said with a smile that a conversation with her father alone was pretty good for such a small child. As soon as everyone left, Shiren said that he would like to ask Jin a few questions in person. According to the twins, Jin has some special power. Jin tried to hide it and started talking about how Rankindles aren't allowed to use magic. After all, then you cannot fully focus on fencing and reach the top of your skill. But Shiren was insistent and once again asked the boy what this power was. He said that if it was magic, he wouldn't just let it go. Jin started to answer, thinking that as long as his father knew about his powers, he wouldn't let go. The boy himself wondered what kind of power it was, the power of Solderit. Jin said that he doesn't know what it is, maybe magic, or maybe aura. It began to emit shadow energy. He himself was wondering what such a power was called, so he created a bundle of dark energy to demonstrate it to his father. He asked his father to help him figure it out. Seeing this, my father suddenly realized what kind of power it was. This is the power of the founder of the Rangandal family. By taking a look at this, the father realized that the boy has the energy of shadows, the same energy that the Barasada has. My father came to the conclusion that he was indeed destined to lead the family. The boy, holding a ball of shadow energy, turned to his father. My father spoke. He said that Jin had the power of Soderith, the god of shadows. Jin asked his father if it was really the power of the shadow god. My father confirmed it. My father told me that Solderit had made a contract with Lord Temer, the founder of the Rankandal family. Solderit has since become the patron saint of the family. However, since Temer's death, the shadow god was never seen again. My father couldn't explain why Solderit had decided that, but it looked like Solderit was trying to contact the Rankandal through Jin. Then the boy said that he wanted to ask his father something. He asked his father about the shadow god, why Solderit is stronger than Shiren. My father turned his back and pondered. He said he didn't know, and that he had never had to fight a god before. Jin pondered the answer, puzzled. Looking at Shiren's smiling face, he couldn't think of a better answer. My father turned to Jin. He called him son and his hand started moving closer to Jin's head. Jin was startled. He thought something was going to happen. But Shiren placed his hand on his son's head and praised him. He told him it was good to ask. His innocent question gave Shiren a great topic of conversation. Shiren said that seeing Jin was the right thing to do. He added that he also wanted to ask a question. He wondered what Jin would do with her power. Jin put his hand to his heart and said that he was going to use it for the good of the family. Then the father looked at the boy with disapproval and muttered his own words that he would use the force for the good of the family. After that, a smile appeared on his stubbly face, and he exclaimed loudly that the Jin made him laugh. Jin didn't understand what was going on. He stood silently in front of his father. Jin's father told him that he beat up his brothers. I put them outside in a thunderstorm, and I asked him how he dares to say that the power is for the good of his family. Jin stood silently with his head bowed. My father told me to tell Jin not to lie to him. Jin knew that his father wouldn't just forget about it. Jin was trembling, but he still found the courage and determination to respond. He said that he uses his power to achieve his goals. His father frowned again and looked at Jin in silence. When suddenly he said that he liked this answer. Jin was surprised that such an answer suited his father. Shiren headed for the exit. As he passed Jin, he said that he would keep an eye on him. Shiren walked out, but Jin was still standing in the same spot. Once the door closed, Jin could no longer contain his emotions. He was really scared. Panting, he was glad he'd gotten away with it. He was also glad that he was able to find out what this shadow energy was and that it was justified. He couldn't have expected his father to be interested. A moment from his previous life popped up in his mind. A moment where he was standing broken behind his father, who didn't even pay attention to him. But this life is the exact opposite of the last one. Clenching his fist, Jin thought with a smile on his face. Jin and his nanny were taking a walk in the Tempest Castle. Suddenly, someone called out to him. It was Marie, and she handed him the box. He asked his little sister what it was. She said it was a special gift from her big sister. She gave it to the babysitter, saying it was heavy. What was in that box Jin didn't know and couldn't guess. Marie told him to cook it well, to chew it thoroughly, and she wished him to grow up big and strong. Deef asked Marie where her suitcase was. She said she gave it to Junior. Hearing this, Jin wondered why she had given it to him. Jin opened the suitcase. When he opened it, the nanny was shocked. Orange energy radiated from the box. He saw that there was something that looked like a heart and a strange energy was coming from it. It turned out to be the heart of a phoenix, and Jin could tell that he was confused. To give something like this to a child, you have to be crazy. Marie Rankandal, Knight of the 6th rank, 7th standard bearer of the Rankandals. They called her Raging Wind. She has another nickname, but few people know about it. It is also called the Fury of the Southern Lands. Obviously, the battle-mad sister had given Jin such a gift. Her wishes for him to grow big and strong were not empty words. She wanted him to fight her. Jin was sitting at the table. He reasoned that if you eat the phoenix heart at such a young age, you can not only get resistance to fire, but also grow faster. He also remembered that a 6th-ranked mage needed the phoenix heart to safely summon it. He had already imagined that he might even be able to summon a phoenix in this lifetime. Meanwhile, the nanny came over with a plate in her hands. She set the plate down on the table, and I noticed that Lady Marie had given Jin such a lovely present. She asked Jin to start eating while the dish was still warm. Jin was about to start, but there were 2 brothers standing behind him. They looked like they were hungry, too. He asked them not to delay and directly say what they want. They didn't show any sign of insinuating that they had cooked too much, that Jin couldn't handle the whole pot alone. Jin asked them if they really wanted it and they immediately started nodding. Then Jin decided to give them something to do. The 2 brothers went to the mine and dug. Of course, they weren't happy that they were doing this. They thought, why should they? We wondered what the point of all this was. They were afraid that they would get in trouble for digging around here. The second brother said that if something happens, the younger one will answer. Forgetting about all the inconveniences for the sake of soup, they continued to dig. Suddenly, it turned out that the mine they were digging was directly above a certain room. Suddenly, we see that a person is in a cell that is filled with water. It is immediately clear that it is well protected. We can see what kind of person he is. It gives off a dark aura that resembles the energy of shadows. Seeing his face, it becomes clear that he is unconscious and most likely he was imprisoned in such a place. The twins did return. They had completed Jin's errand. The nanny was at a loss as to what they were doing. Upon their return, Jin congratulated them and said that they had done it quickly. The 2 brothers were disheveled and their clothes were covered in mud. They were standing with a shovel, pickaxe, and lantern. One of them said that they had completed Jin's errand and were entitled to soup. Then Jin, who was wearing a raincoat, said that the soup was already waiting for them on the table. Daytona was glad to hear that. When they saw 2 spoons with some soup in them, the only thing they could say was to ask where. Then they turned to Jin and called him little brother. They were not happy with the fact that there is only a teaspoon and does not seem to him that this is not enough. Jin replied that he said he would give you some soup, but didn't say how much. After that, he rhetorically asked if he kept his promise and then wished him a good appetite. The brothers sarcastically thanked him, clearly displeased. Then the action takes place in the forest, among the trees. Jin took off his hood. He seems to have noticed something. It turns out that Jin came to the same mine where the twins were digging. He had given them an assignment to dig a mine for a bit and didn't expect them to try so hard. After knocking on the wall, Jin determined that a 1st-rank spell would be enough to break through such a wall. After that, Jin created a green ball in his hands and a green-colored magic aura appeared around it. He said that he was almost upset that he didn't have anywhere to throw his magic. He leaned his hands against the wall. A round magic rune appeared. Rocks flew in all directions. Jin managed to break through the wall. He said that he was finally in his seats. It turned out that he got into the secret storage of the rank candle. Looking at the sealed gate, he thought that in his previous life, he never got here, so now he feels somewhat awkward. He stood in front of the gate and thought about what his older brother had told him, namely the code phrase needed to open the gate. Suddenly, Jin thought of something and smiled. Jin, standing in front of the door, said that the Rangandal child wanted to comfort Muraken. That was the secret code. The door began to move. It opened and Jin entered the vault. This vault holds the secrets of the families that the Rangandal have destroyed over the past millennium. This storage was really huge. Only the Rangandal bannerman could enter this vault. In his previous life, Jin's brother had said that he didn't need to know about this place since he wouldn't be the standard bearer anyway. Even so, his brother helped Jin. Remembering this, Jin decided that now he would find a use for his knowledge. Suddenly, Jin saw a strange dark aura. He didn't understand what it was. When he got a better look, he saw that there was a human inside the cell, but then he saw that he had scales on his face and realized that he wasn't a human. At first, he thought about where this creature came from, but suddenly he realized something very important. In the same code phrase, the name Muraken is pronounced, Jin guessed that the creature behind the glass was Muraken. Jin wondered if this was the Black Dragon Muraken. It is said that the first standard bearer defeated the Black Dragon and sent him into a deep sleep. Up until this point, Jin hadn't believed in legends. He thought they were just fairy tales. Jin stood looking at Muraken for a moment longer. Then he came to his senses and his priority was the books he was looking for. Jin continued to search for books. Suddenly Muraken, who had been sleeping for centuries, moved his finger. Jin found the book he was looking for. He was standing in front of a bookshelf and he said that it contained the secrets of various families. Deciding to start with the Kunjin family, who were also swordsmen, he picked up the book. As he read, he realized that the theory was too complicated for third-rank magic. Jin wanted to take all the books with him, but then he might be caught with the books, especially since there was nowhere to hide them. Then he found a way out of the situation. He decided that he would come and copy books. He came back from the vault and read the book copied from there as if nothing had happened, but no one could suspect him. The next day, he also sat and copied the book in the vault. Suddenly, he heard strange noises. He was scared, so he got up from the table and put things off for later. Jin asked who was there. He couldn't believe that someone would come here from Tempest Castle at this hour. Suddenly the doors opened and the man turned to Jin and asked who he was. Jin was shocked. He recognized Muraken. He couldn't understand why Muraken had awakened. Jin couldn't remember ever hearing about his awakening in his previous life. At the same time, Muraken stared at the boy in silence. There were scales on his face, and his eye was like a snake's and glowed yellow. Jin stood there in fear. He tried to reassure himself that Muraken the dragon was the Rankindle family's guardian and that if Jin showed respect, he would spare the child. Jin introduced himself. He said he was a Rankindle child, and that he welcomes the guardian of the family. Hearing this, Muraken's face changed. His veins bulged even on his forehead. Suddenly, he started shouting and asking Jin what he called him. Muraken asked Jin again if he had called him a guardian. He was very angry and shouted so loudly that Jin covered his ears with his hands. Muraken also indignantly said how dare Jin treat him like a servant. He started cursing Rankindle. He was shouting about what Rankindle had told the descendants that he was now considered a guardian. He said he wouldn't take it out on the small stuff, but he's furious. But come to think of it, he'd already snapped at Gina. Then Muraken calmed down, crouching down and repeating the word devil several times. He took a deep breath in and out, then said he'd been locked up for a while. Just woke up and sees the baby. Jin stood in front of Muraken, puzzled, and didn't understand anything. When Muraken suddenly leaned over the boy and tried to smell something, he asked why Jin smelled like shadow energy. Muraken said that even though he had slept for 1,000 years, he definitely hadn't forgotten the smell. According to him, only those who sign a contract with SoulScrolls smell like Temer, the founder of Rankindles, once did. Suddenly, the boy understood why Muraken had awakened. It turned out that it was all because of his strength. Meanwhile, Muraken was trying to smell where the shadow energy was coming from. Then Jin decided that it was time to try something. He turned to Mr. Muraken. Muraken asked him what the boy knew about shadow energy. Back then, Jin personally demonstrated his mastery of shadow energy. Jin said that according to his father, the god of shadows gave the boy his power. This clearly didn't please Muraken. A drop of sweat rolled down his forehead, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing, hoping it was SoulScrolls' joke. He was very upset that the one he had been waiting for 1,000 years was just a child. As a result, there was an awkward pause between them. The two of them stood in silence, looking at each other. Muraken was on his knees, exhausted, and turned to Jin. He told him a story about how he had once made a promise to SoulScrolls, and it looked like Muraken would have to team up with Jin to fulfill that promise. Jin started to ask Muraken something about his promise to SoulScrolls, but Muraken cut him off. He said that he would explain everything later because he had just woken up and wasn't thinking straight yet. And I don't think Jin will understand. But at least he wanted to introduce himself properly to SoulScrolls' follower. Shadow energy appeared around Muraken. Jin was shocked at how much shadow energy Muraken was using. Muraken introduced himself and said that he was a representative of SoulScrolls. His hand was shrouded in shadow energy and there were claws where his fingers should have been. Gradually his body was completely shrouded in this energy. Muraken also said that he is a friend of SoulScrolls and the last descendant of the first creature created from the shadow. Muraken was completely different from his human form. His eyes glowed white, and he had wings instead of arms. Finally, he turned into a dragon, and a powerful shadow energy radiated from him. He said that according to the 1,000-year contract, from now on, he would serve Jin. Jin couldn't say a word, he just wondered if such a great being would serve him. Muraken, in the form of a dragon, asked Jin for his name. In response, Jin smiled and looked at Muraken. When he knocked off his fist, he revealed himself as Jin Rankindle, the 13th and youngest of the Rankindle family. The Black Dragon Muraken. Mount Muraken, a place with violent winds, is named after this dragon. Once upon a time, the Black Dragon Muraken ruled the lands of the Rankindle, but 1,000 years ago Temer slain Muraken. Bura Castle is said to have been destroyed as a result. Muraken fell into a deep sleep. Jin came out of the vault. He wasn't sure if the founder's guardian dragon was telling the truth. Anyone who makes a contract with a god must be paired with a guardian dragon. However, the guardian of SoulScrolls didn't know anything about the dragon. Jin assumes it's all because of Muraken's hibernation. But now that he's awake, he's going to be a personal guardian, Jin thought. At the entrance to the vault, he indicated in advance that he had come. Muraken was glad to see the boy. More precisely, what he brought with him. Jin gave him a snack that the nanny had prepared for him. Jin said that since they would spend the next few days together, it is worth asking Muraken about everything that he is interested in. That's how Jin hid Muraken in the secret library for a long time. While Muraken ate, Jin asked him questions, and once again Jin asked about the battle with Temer. Muraken said he shouldn't remember because it was 1,000 years ago. Jin just stood there, not knowing what to say. Mirakin said he was sure of one thing. But before he finished, he asked for another strawberry pie. It turned out that the ancient black dragon liked strawberry pie. Mirakin asked Jin what he was doing here. Jin said he brought empty books and wrote down everything Mirakin said. He was surprised and asked if Jin understood anything at all. Only 30%, Jin said. Mirakin told him not to lose heart and complimented him on how good it was for his age. Other children are not capable of this and even lazy. Jin retorted that this was true for ordinary children, and he's a Rankendel and he can't afford it. He has 12 older brothers and sisters, and also mom, dad, grandparents, and if he wants to crush them, he'll have to try harder. Jin asked Mirakin how much of this book the founder himself would have understood. Jin thought about how he would look compared to the strongest man in history, how he could have proved himself. Mirakin replied that at Jin's age, he wouldn't have understood a single line. But theory is not always necessary. Mirakin said that even though Temur didn't read books, he still fought well. He added that Jin has the potential of Temur, but he is no match for him. It seems that Jin is very hurt by this. He asked Mirakin if this meant that he would never lead the family. After a brief pause, Mirakin replied that he wasn't. He said that once Jin signed a contract with Solderit, so did Temur. And read something so complex. Putting his hand on Jin's head, he said that Jin was still young. He needs to be patient and train more, and then he will be as strong as Temur. Mirakin said that Jin might even be able to surpass him. Then, when Jin asked if he really believes there, Mirakin replied that this is indeed the case. And he said that Solderit had a nickname for infinity. Solderit's power is limitless, so he's like a follower, too. So he told Jin to keep his head down and believe in himself. So Mirakin decided to teach Jin a secret technique to lighten his mood a little. Mirakin placed his palm on Jin's back and released some energy. The boy was in pain and asked what kind of technique it was. Mirakin said that this is a technique for releasing shadow energy. It was the first time Jin had ever heard of such a technique, which wasn't surprising since he wasn't experienced in using shadow magic yet. According to Mirakin, this technique should be able to be done by anyone who is connected with shadow magic. Beginnings and endings of shadow energy subjugation training. But Mirakin warned that if the boy did not master everything, it could be dangerous, so they will learn carefully and gradually. Interested, the boy accepted the terms and immediately asked where to start. Mirakin said that first you need to learn how to unleash mana. Jin asked why it was necessary, but at the same time, he remembered that he often did this in his previous life. Mirakin explained that releasing shadow energy is opening and moving the flow of mana. To do this, you need to have perfect mana control. He said they would be doing it for the next 2 or 3 years. Jin then thought that it was too long. Mirakin smiled and looked away, saying that you can't learn something advanced without knowing the basics. So once they learn how to move their mana, they'll start learning how to move it. Meanwhile, Jin had already revealed his mana. Holding the magic sphere in his hands, he asked Mirakin what to do next. As soon as Mirakin saw this, he was shocked. How did he do it? Asked Mirakin. It turned out that Jin has been able to do this for a long time. Mirakin said that he couldn't believe his eyes, so he asked Jin if he wanted to learn how to move mana. But Jin, as if nothing had happened, immediately moved the mana sphere from one hand to the other. Mirakin was pleasantly surprised by this. He said that only the greatest geniuses are capable of such a thing. Since the boy had all the basics, Mirakin had no choice but to show what the release of shadow energy looked like. Mirakin explained that the energy of shadows is drawn, oddly enough, from shadows. Solderit created all the shadows in the world. Meanwhile, we see that the shadows around Mirakin begin to distort and seem to reach out to him. That is why, Mirakin continued, Solderit is the lord of all the shadows of the world, and Jin is his follower. Suddenly, shadows began to move across the floor. Shadows from all objects suddenly came to life and gathered in one place under Mirakin's feet. Mirakin said that Jin could also become a shadow lord. He turned to the boy and asked him what he thought about it. This was the release of shadow energy. Jin's face was ecstatic. At the same time, a battle took place somewhere in the forest. Lady Luna stood with a sword in her hands over the monster she had defeated. A knight turned to her and informed her that everything was clear on their territory. There are 5 areas left to be cleaned up, which you need to deal with in order to complete the task. According to Luna, 4 months is enough for them, and now the knights can rest. With a look full of sadness, she was standing on a battlefield. She swung her sword, shaking off the blood on it, and wondered if this was something that 9-year-olds liked. The corpses of various creatures were scattered around her. Half a year after Jin met Mirakin, the twins left the Tempest Castle. The twins said that they would see each other again, and Jin wished them to take care of themselves. And so the twins got into the carriage and drove away. Meanwhile, Jin has already turned 9 years old. His nanny Gilly wished him a happy birthday and gave him a cake. Jin thanked the nanny and asked her to give everyone a piece. Then, all of a sudden, Han came into the room. Han apologized for interrupting. Jin asked him what had happened. Jin started talking as Luna was already entering the castle. Han informed Jin that Lady Luna had arrived at the castle. Jin and the nanny were surprised by Luna's visit. Luna was the first standard bearer of the rank candle and a knight of the 9th rank. She was the firstborn of the head of the family. The nickname White Whale has been established for her. Even though Luna was stronger than her siblings, she wasn't interested in a power struggle. She's not involved in a dirty war for the throne, so she's really like a lone white whale. That's why Luna never cared about other children. In a previous life, Jin and Luna didn't even seem to be a family. They were so far apart. That's why her visit surprised Jin so much. At first, Jin thought something terrible had happened. He then assumed that she had somehow found out that he was in the secret library, and so they met each other. Luna's first sentence was just that Jin had grown up. Jin thought it was an official visit, so he told Luna that if he had known she was coming, he would have dressed appropriately. Luna, in turn, only said that he was cute. And did she really need to notify everyone in order to see her younger brother? Jin was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Luna took him by the shoulders and asked if he was ill because he didn't look well. Jin replied that he wasn't sick, but just a little nervous. Suddenly Luna was lost in thought. Jin said it's the first time he's seen her up close. That's why he's on edge. Suddenly Luna thought about his words. She thought Jin thought she was trying to follow him or something. Because it's normal in the rank candle family to follow relatives, steal from them, trample them in the mud. Suddenly Luna became nervous and after a short pause hesitantly said that she had behaved disrespectfully. Jin was surprised and asked her again. Then Luna said that Jin might be Mal, but she shouldn't have forgotten that he was rank candle after all. Then she lowered her eyes and apologized to Jin. She got down on one knee and called Jin baby and said to him. She wanted to talk to him in private and asked him if Nanny and the knights could leave them for a while. Jin was surprised that she wanted to talk to him alone. He replied that he would also like to talk, but he still didn't understand what she wanted, but he assumed it was nothing bad. Jin, little brother Luna said. She wanted to tell him something. That was something that was the reason why she came without an invitation. Jin is interested and asks what it is. Luna said that when his father visited him, his behavior attracted all the siblings. Then she took his hand gently and told him that it meant that once he left the Castle of Storm they would be watching him closely. Luna was clearly worried about her brother's fate and said something else to him. She hoped that he could live happily ever after without getting involved in a family conflict. Luna really didn't want Jin to be harmed by the Rankendel family's customs. After saying that, Jin realized why Luna had decided to visit him. It turns out that my sister came out of the war for the throne. Jin then wondered why she didn't tell him about it in her previous life if she didn't want him to get involved in the war for the throne. There were two possible reasons why this happened. Perhaps it was because he was unworthy to even speak to her. Or maybe in her previous life, she didn't warn him because no one even saw him as a rival. Jin put his hand on Luna's wrist and said that he was really grateful to her, but he really wasn't going to get knocked out of the game. Then Luna tried to change his mind by saying that she really wasn't joking and that she wasn't talking to him because she thought he would become her competitor. Jin let it be known that he knew it was serious, but there was already an attempt on his life. By assassination, he meant that he had a curse on him and his death in a previous life. Suddenly Luna's face changed abruptly and she asked Jin what he was talking about. Jin said that because of this, there is no turning back. Suddenly, a dark purple aura began to emanate from the moon and she asked Jin who dared to do this. Angered, she asked again about who had dared to attack him in the Tempest Castle. The entire room and even the cup on the table began to shake from the aura of the moon. Jin looked up at the moon. At that moment, he saw a different moon from the one that had communicated with him a moment ago. Her eyes were filled with anger, and she was ready to kill the one who dared to attack Jin. She asked Jin a few more times who wanted to kill him, but Jin chose to hide it by saying that it was classified information. Then he clarified that he didn't really know who it was, but even though he was attacked, he's fine right now. Thanks to Luna's reaction, Jin realized that not all of his relatives hated him, and he was glad to see that they didn't. Suddenly, Luna, full of sadness, hugged Jin. It turns out that Jin has already been dragged into this vile conflict, Luna said. It saddened her. In his previous life, Jin wouldn't have thought that Luna was so kind and empathetic. Luna changed the subject and said that today is a holiday and you should not talk about sad things. It's Jin's birthday, after all. Luna came to congratulate him, and with that, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something. She took out the box and presented it to her brother. In this box, there was a pendant with a blue stone in the center. She asked Jin to turn his back for a second while holding the pendant, and after putting the pendant on him, she said that if he was in a desperate situation, he would have to break the blue stone. And when he breaks it, she will come to his aid wherever she is. So she asked Jin to never take off this pendant. Luna leaned a little closer to Jin, a smile on her face, and wished him a happy birthday. Everyone was sitting at the table drinking tea, and the nanny had brought strawberry shortcake. Luna even managed to spoon-feed Jin like a small child, so it made Jin uncomfortable. Meanwhile, his nanny stood there and watched with a smile as Luna loved her little brother. After all this, Luna said goodbye and said that it was time for her to go. Jin told her to take care of herself and waved goodbye to her as well, now wearing a pendant with a large blue stone. Jin came to Muraken, judging by the way Muraken he greeted him and waited for Jin. Muraken didn't really have time to say anything before he noticed what was on Jin's neck. When asked what was on his neck, Jin said it was a birthday present. Then Muraken told Jin that the person who gave it to him seems to love him very much. Judging from Muraken's reaction, this pendant was special. Jin asked Muraken what it was. This pendant is an artifact of the Demon King Orgel. Muraken told the story that 1,000 years ago, people risked their lives just to get one of his artifacts. Is this pendant really that amazing? Asked Jin. Muraken replied that this pendant gives the wearer resistance to attacking magic no higher than rank 5 and also increases their magic power. And it is possible that it has the ability to summon. Muraken knew a lot about the pendant because he was living in that period. He said that there was a person with very strong energy here and assumed that the gift was from him. Jin said it was a gift from his older sister and asked if he could sense her energy even from here. Muraken actually sensed her energy even from the secret vault, but more than that, he said that she also noticed his energy. Jin was afraid of that. He asked Muraken if she would tell anyone about it. Muraken said that there was no reason to worry since she had given him something so precious after all and pointed to the pendant. He asked if Jin thought she would turn on her brother and leave him to die. He assured Jin that he could trust her, and yet, it turns out that the moon actually felt Muraken's energy. On the way out of the Tempest Castle, she said that there was a strong energy coming from here that wasn't there before. But she wasn't hostile, quite the opposite. She is ready to pretend that she doesn't know anything even if her brother is up to something. Jin, in turn, should always remember that no matter how much he grows up, she will always be on his side. Jin thought that life at Tempest Castle would be incredibly boring. But it brought him a lot of things. Father's recognition and hopes, Phoenix Heart from Sister Marie, friendship with the moon, and even getting to know the dragon guardian Muraken. This was something Jin had never dreamed of in his previous life. Jin is doing really well right now because he's only 10 years old. The action takes place in a room with a lot of weapons. In it, Jin fights with a man who punches him, but the teacher blocks him. It turns out that this is part of his preparation for moving to the central castle. The man hits him back, but Jin manages to block it. Jin lunges again and lands a powerful punch, but the man blocks it again. This man did not expect any other. After fighting with Jin, he understood why the master himself was interested in him. When this man was training others, he was judging their abilities, but judging by the look in his eyes, it was Jin who was judging whether he was fit to be a teacher. And so their duel ended. This man is Jin's teacher. He said that she had enough today. Then the teacher turned to Jin and asked if there was anything that didn't suit him during the training session. The man bowed and said that it was an honor to teach Jin. He added that it wasn't long before Jin left the castle, and the teacher promised him that he would do his best to prepare him in the best possible way. Jin just smiled and said that he would rely on the teacher. After practice, Jin held a candle in his hands and looked at it with interest. He stuck his finger right into the flame. Suddenly, he exclaimed that he had finally succeeded. The nanny who saw this was worried that he might have been burned. Gina turned to the nanny and said that now for him fire is like warm water. The nanny giggled and said she was glad Lady Marie's gift was working. She had only heard of the Phoenix Heart but had never seen its effects in person, and neither had Jin. Jin got this ability because he ate half of the Phoenix Heart and he planned to eat the other half in a couple of years. Meanwhile, his nanny was already packing up her things and informed him that they were leaving the castle at dawn. When she saw 2 books lying on the table, she asked him if he should take them with him on the journey. Jin said yes, he would read them on the way. The nanny asked him if he could take anything else, to which Jin said no. After packing up his things, she told him that she would also make him a strawberry pie. Jin said that he would like to have a pie and suddenly jumped up and remembered something. He said he'd take a little walk. Jin went to the secret vault and met Muraken there. He told Muraken that he was leaving tomorrow. Muraken said that he had been waiting for this day. But Jin wondered quite logically how he was going to take Muraken with him. In response, Muraken replied with a grin that he was a legendary black dragon and there was no need to panic. As a friend, Muraken started talking about how he was weak, but even that wouldn't stop him from going after Jin without anyone noticing. Jin asked Muraken why he hadn't said anything about being weak before. It was all because he had been asleep for 1,000 years. Jin asked if Muraken would be able to regain his strength, but he replied that they would become stronger together. After all, Muraken is his dragon guardian, so Mirakan told Jin that he was becoming a strong swordsman mage like Temur. Jin asked Mirakan about the fact that the Rankindle were originally both swordsmen and magicians. As a friend, he recalled what he had heard from Solderit in his previous life. Solderit had told him that their family were swordsmen and magicians. The founder of the Temur Rankindle family was the strongest swordsman mage in history. Apparently, at this time, everyone forgot about it. Suddenly Mirakan started talking about how Rankindelv had rejected magic and was only aiming for swordsmanship because of a humiliating contract made 1,000 years ago. Although Mirakan is revered as the guardian of the family, it is unlikely that anyone will be happy about his return. But if that had happened 1,000 years ago, he and Jin would have been honored for bringing back the world's noblest creature, Mirakan said. Jin asked Mirakan if he really thought so. Mirakan thought for a moment, then admitted that it sounded like nonsense, but whatever it was, he would hide well and asked Jin not to worry about it. Jin asked Mirakan what would happen if someone came to the vault and found him missing. Mirakan said that he would cast an illusion using dragon magic. Jin asked what would happen if the illusion was discovered. Mirakan got angry, grabbed Jin's head, and rhetorically asked Jin if he had forgotten that Mirakan was a shadow dragon. Mirakan said that for him to cast an illusion is a mere trifle, but since Mirakan has weakened, this illusion won't last long. But he promised that he would support her as long as he could until he regained his strength. Jin was about to leave and thanked Mirakan. Mirakan only pointed out that since Jin was grateful, he could have shown more respect. Jin suddenly remembered that he had something for Mirakan. He reached into his bag and pulled out a strawberry pie as well as the wine he'd stolen. Mirakan was very happy with this offering. After giving him the wine, Jin only asked him not to get drunk so as not to impose some strange illusion. Miraka couldn't contain his emotions and exclaimed that he had raised Jin for a reason, and also asked Jin to introduce him to his nanny. And now it was time to leave. Jin was warned by the nanny not to expect life to be as peaceful as it was inside the walls of Tempest Castle. Hajin may have trained hard at the castle, but now his life will be much more complicated and she won't be able to make him cake anymore. Jin told her not to worry and that he understood everything and would give it his all. The nanny bowed to him and said that she would also devote herself completely to him. Suddenly, someone came up to them and called out to the young master. It turned out to be the knights of the guard Jerome and Holtz. They greeted him. These two knights had to make sure that Jin arrived at the Garden of Swords in one piece. So Jin left the Tempest Castle. On this day, October 30th, 1790, Jin left Berry Castle. As I climbed into the carriage, he was only thinking that he was finally leaving this place. And so the horses started and the carriage drove off. Jin was really waiting to be sent to the Rankindle estate, to the Garden of Swords. Jin and his nanny were on their way to the Garden of Swords. It was snowing heavily outside. At this rate it's going to snow all the way and they'll have to wait it out in the nearest village, Jin said. The nanny said that if there was too much snow, they wouldn't be able to teleport. Suddenly, the carriage stopped abruptly. The knights outside reported that it was an ambush and asked them to stay in the carriage. The nanny hugged Jin and said that everything would be fine and asked him not to worry. Jerome and Holtz are 7th rank knights and Gilly is with him. From the sounds coming from outside, Gilly could tell that there were about 20 enemies out there. Among them are magic, war, and perhaps even archers. But there's hardly anyone above the 7th rank. Suddenly, Jin thought of something. He told Gilly to get out of the carriage at once. Gilly didn't understand and asked Jin what he was talking about. Jin said that the knights of the guard should not leave a Runindle child unattended under any circumstances. One of the knights had to stay, Jin said, and suddenly Nanny understood too. This meant that at least one of these knights was a traitor or an imposter. Jin said that something might have been planted in the carriage, so they should leave. Gilly was angry and took the attack as a mistake. Suddenly, from behind the sleeves of Gilly's battle claws appeared. She said that she would protect Jin and asked him to forgive if he could not control himself. Gilly slammed her claws down hard, and the door shattered into splinters. The snow continued to fall outside. Gilly was carrying Jin in her arms. Running with him in her arms, she said that as soon as they arrived at the estate, she would accept the punishment she deserved. Jin said that he needed to go back to the knights because he wanted to make sure of something. When Gilly asked him what he wanted to make sure of, Jin said what kind of war their allies might have arranged. Jin supposed that if the attackers wanted him, they would have attacked him when he got off the carriage, but it was too quiet and suspicious. The nanny listened to Jin and decided to give him a chance to see for himself. When they arrived at the scene and saw a one-eyed, red-haired man shouting for his subordinates to find Jin Rankadel, Jin's guess was correct. There were two groups on the battlefield, one called Demon and the other called Black Sakura. One of the groups was a group of magicians from the Yuta family, which in turn was part of the Mytile family of magicians. The second group were the mercenaries from the Black King's squad. One of the mages spotted Jin's nanny, Gilly McLaurin, and Gina Ranchendel with her. Their main goal was to protect Jin Rankendel. Suddenly, the same red-haired, one-eyed man stepped in front of Jin and Gilly, blocking them out. He introduced himself. His name is Murika and he is the captain of the Black King's squad. He came here on the orders of the Rankandles to rescue Jin Runkandle. At the center of the battlefield were the two knights who had promised to bring Jin to the Garden of Swords in one piece. It turned out that they were the ones who dared to attack the young master. They were in a fighting stance and were ready to fight to the last. These two knights weren't traitors, they were imposters, as if they were truly 7th rank knights, they would have no problem dealing with everyone. The two knights were surrounded by the men from the Black King's squad and the mages from the Yuta family. The knights were desperate with despair. Suddenly Jilly screamed and asked who they were working for and what they needed. One of the knights said with a grin that it was an obvious question. Enraged, he said that he would not answer the Rankandle mutt. The nanny asked Jin what she should do. Jin coldly ordered her to kill one of the knights, then cut off the other's hands and bring them to him. Jilly obeyed the order. She made a sharp lunge towards the knight who had been rude to her. The last thing this knight saw was Gilly's menacing gaze, so she stabbed the knight in the throat and killed him. After finishing the first one, she started moving towards the second white-haired knight. The knight was terrified, but nevertheless prepared to defend himself. Before he knew it, Jilly had already stabbed him and he saw his own blood. She knocked him down and chopped off his arm. Then, she also mercilessly chopped off his other arm. The knight was terrified and screamed in pain. The seemingly fragile girl ruthlessly defeated her opponents while never doubting her actions. Holding the knight by the hair, she dragged him to Jin's feet. Jin told the knight that some of their patrons had greatly underestimated their opponents. After all, to become a nanny in the Rankandle family, you need to be a warrior of at least the 7th rank. So Jin advised him that if they wanted to kill any of the children, they should send 3 or 4 8th rank knights. Lying on the floor with 2 arms missing, the knight shouted with all his strength that this was just a warning and the rule of the Rankandle would soon come to an end. Jin said that he understood and that he wanted the same thing, because if the Rankandle rule comes to an end, then Jin Runkandle's rule will begin. The knight raised his head with the last of his strength as he looked at Jin and shouted glory to the great Zippel family. Jin thought about it and remembered what kind of Zippel family it was. Here we are introduced to another famous family. Apart from the Rangandles, there was another strong family that ruled the other half of the world. Unlike the Rangandles who chase after swordsmanship, this family is honing their magic skills. 1,000 years ago, after the death of the Rangandle founder Temur, Zippel and the Rangandles made a humiliating pact forbidding the Rangandles from using magic, and all their magical abilities were sealed. The Zippel family has been a sworn enemy of the Rankandle family for 1,000 years, and now it becomes clear what a humiliating contract Murakan was talking about. Jin said that he was wondering who would do such a thing, but these knights are just followers of the Zippels. He told Gilly that they would leave the knight somewhere nearby, since there was no point in talking to him. Then the nurse took the knight by the hair and dragged him somewhere. The knight only asked to kill him. Jin stood there thinking that even though the Zippels were sworn enemies of the Rankandle and still made the Rankandle fearful, they had nothing to do with what had happened today. It looks like their followers are doing whatever they want. Still, Jin felt that something wasn't quite right. What confused him was that no matter how good the disguise was, it wasn't that easy to trick a Rangan 7 warrior. And then he wondered if that had helped them, and the image of a man in a white shirt and glasses standing with his back turned made it impossible to make out his face. After throwing the knight out somewhere nearby, the nanny informed Jin that he had obeyed his orders. Jin then spoke to the captain of the Black King's squad. He told the captain that he had survived only because they had diverted attention to themselves and that as soon as Jin arrived at the castle he would report on how Captain Murika had helped them. Jin said that he had no doubt that the family would reward the captain handsomely, but for now, he ordered him to take care of the teleportation gate. Suddenly, the captain looked at Jin standing next to the nanny and thought that Jin was just a child. But even though he was a Rankandle, wasn't it too early for him to walk around so freely outside the castle? Captain Murika didn't understand why Jin was so confident, since he was only 10 years old. And then Murika seriously thought about Jin's words. That really Jin's words about establishing the rule of Jin Rankandle are not childish fantasies and he is completely serious. After some thought, he turned to his subordinates and ordered them to monitor their behavior while the gate was being prepared for teleportation. He also ordered them not to do anything. The members of the Black King's squad didn't understand what the order was at all. They were upset and wondered why they should bother with their behavior at all. Apparently, I've never ordered this as a captain before. Jilly informed Captain Murika that they were ready to leave. Then let's go, he said, smiling awkwardly and putting his hand to his heart. The soldiers had never seen the captain behave like this, so they were also in a slightly awkward situation. The captain, Nanny, and Jin walked through the snowy location in front of Kama while the rest of the group walked behind. I don't think anything will happen if they leave those imposters unattended. Jin said that nothing would happen, even if they were found dead or alive, they would serve as a good example to their comrades. And he praised Jilly. Judging by the words of the Black King's squad, the heroes will reach the village in 2 hours, and there they plan to wait out the snowfall. Jin turned to Jilly. He said that she shouldn't blame herself for what happened today and that even Han, a knight of the 9th rank, didn't suspect anything. Therefore, it is even harder for her, warriors of the 7th rank, to notice something, and there is nothing wrong with what he says that a knight guardian should do. Jilly turned her back on Jin and apologized, feeling ashamed. Jin suddenly remembered that Jilly hadn't changed at all. The fate of every Rangandal nanny is linked to the fate of the child entrusted to her. Jilly had been his nanny in a previous life, so because he didn't have the talent, she was bullied by the other nanas, but she never blamed Jin. And when he was exiled from the family, Jilly was exiled with him. And then she only apologized to him for not being able to serve him properly, as she said while bowing her head. This was how Jin was treated by Jilly in his previous life, so he decided that he wouldn't be too hard on her. The new life is radically different from the past, so Jilly also needs to harden her character. Young master, I will gladly accept any punishment for what has happened, Jilly said, putting one hand on the other. Suddenly, Jin started yelling at her. He told her to stop blaming herself and that it was in order. Jilly, meanwhile, stood submissively with her head down. Jin said that as long as she was his nanny, she was his only guardian. And if she freaked out over such trifles, it would only cause more problems in the future. He asked her not to be forced to repeat it twice and asked if she was clear. And then Jilly again lowered her gaze and feeling guilty promised that she would definitely improve. Jin led the way, a drop of sweat rolling down his face, embarrassed that he had just yelled at his babysitter. Along the way, Jilly thought that she had no idea that the master was so worried about her. She knew it was all for her own good. Therefore, she was determined to muster her willpower for Jin's safety. After thinking about it, she cheerfully and enthusiastically said that she would give it her all. Finally, the heroes reached that very village. The heroes came to the hotel, where they took 2 rooms. Meanwhile, Jin continued to think about what had happened and the imposters, and he assumed that he was probably the one behind it. And here we were introduced to the same man in glasses and a white shirt. It turns out that he is a magician of reincarnation and his name is Buber Gaston. Although dragons are also good at reincarnation, even they are not able to reincarnate perfectly as they cast an unusual shadow. There's only one Buber in the world who can do that. With the help of his magic, he committed far more than one crime, reincarnating in various people, and all in order to sow chaos around the world. In that case, it was more complicated if Buber was really involved, even though he hadn't done anything special yet. And so our hero settled in a hotel. Jin recalled that in his previous life, when he was 20 years old, the Bemet Empire's special branch arrested Buber. Jin reasoned that Buber might be useful. You just need to poach it. But Jin immediately wondered why you'd want to poach someone who once pointed a sword at you. Already sleepy and yawning, Jin thought that before Buber did any more damage, he needed to make sure that something was different from his previous life. Jilly hung up her fur coat, then turned to Jin and told him that she would guard him outside. Jin was already asleep. He was sleeping pretty soundly, so it wasn't a big deal that Jilly had almost accidentally woken him up. When she saw that Jin was asleep, she just smiled sweetly and left the room. Suddenly, sounds began to come from somewhere. We see that it is a black cat vigorously wagging its tail. It was meowing so loudly and insistently that Jin could hear it even in his sleep. Suddenly Jin woke up, and he didn't know how he fell asleep. Jin stretched, even though he had trained a lot in the Castle of Storm. But still, such loads are not suitable for a 10-year-old, he noticed. Meanwhile, strange noises continued to come from outside the room. Jin couldn't just let it go and decided to check out what was going on. He looked out the window and saw a strange black cat standing right behind him. When Jin saw this, he was speechless and surprised at the same time. At that moment, he remembered Muraken's words about hiding well. Jin leaned on the windowsill with one hand and covered his face with the other and said to the black cat that he had promised to follow him without being noticed. Did he mean to turn into a cat? An enraged Muraken in the form of a cat apologized, continuing to scratch the window. Jin let the cat in and said that he was surprised and didn't expect Muraken to look like this. Jin thought Muraken would turn into one of his servants, like a stable boy. In response, Muraken took on his human form and told Jin that he would have been declassified and if Jin had thought of it himself. Muraken continued to approach the boy, saying that Jin didn't know how hard it had been for him. At that moment, Muraken tripped over a plank sticking out of the wooden floor. Suddenly he fell with a crash, hit the windowsill on his face, and screamed in pain. Jilly immediately came running to such loud screams. She was agitated and literally rushed into the room shouting about whether something had happened. There was an awkward pause. Jin was standing awkwardly smiling and looking at the nanny, while Muraken was squatting next to him and holding his face. It hit so hard that it broke the thick wooden windowsill in two. Jilly asked Muraken how he dared to pursue the master. She was really angry at him and prepared to attack. She threw Muraken to the ground and stood over him, threatening to cut him to pieces if he didn't tell her everything. Even though Jilly was Jin ranked